Having successfully launched 3 businesses, bilingual mum to 2 and entrepreneur Antonia Bowes-Brown has connected with thousands of people, both French and international, since moving to the French Riviera. These connections allow her to speak with successful local businesses and inspirational people about life here on the Côte d'Azur and share it with you. Welcome to the Riviera Firefly podcast with your host, entrepreneur, and my mum, Antonia Bowes-Brown.
Hello Fireflies, I'm thrilled to share this next Riviera Firefly episode with you as part of our Lifestyle and Health series. Joining me today is Faye Villalba. What a pleasure it is to have Faye with me actually here in the Riviera Firefly podcast studio. Between you and me, it's one of my very first face-to-face interviews actually, and so I was relieved that it was with a very good friend. Faye is nowadays a very successful yogi, teaching in many of the towns around Sophia Antipolis on a regular basis. She's also a yoga teacher on small retreats and for weekend workshops. She has the most calming voice, and meditation at the end of her sessions literally transforms you away to a really serene place. So it's totally fascinating to hear about her past life in the film industry. She has rubbed shoulders with some of Hollywood's most well-known A-listers. That's certainly not something she normally chats about, and so we're really privileged that she was happy to share some of these stories with you Fireflies. We also share together 2 ways that we have met other people here on the Côte d'Azur, ways to make friends and to make the French Riviera your home. So without further ado, let's roll. Hello Riviera Fireflies, I've got with me today Faye Villalba. No, I knew I'd pronounce that wrong. How do you pronounce it?
Villalba, no you did very well.
Okay,
yeah.
Which comes from what country?
Spain, my husband is Spanish.
Spanish, okay, well we're going to do this interview in English if that's okay with you.
That's absolutely fine, much better, thank you.
So my dear friend Faye, who I've known for quite a long time, we met in a mum and baby group years ago, when our little ones were tiny babes in arms, I think.
Lilia couldn't even walk. No, she couldn't even walk when I first met you. So.
And it is a great way to meet people, isn't it? When you first arrive in the country and you're at home with your kids, your babies and your toddlers thinking, my husband's out at work and it's a really long day ahead.
Well, funnily enough, I'd already been here for 10 years before we adopted Lilia, so I can absolutely vouch for that, because the first 10 years of our lives, I practically lived as a hermit in Bar-sur-Loup, very happily, and it was thanks to the mother and baby group that I met you and several other really good friends who are
we're all friends. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely, yes, yeah. It's lasted, and our children are still friends as well, which is really lovely.
Well, I will put in a link later on, because I think that's a really important thing to share with people.
Definitely.
Of the different mum and baby groups that are still running, because it is a really special moment, you know, it's a precious time. Well, as we're talking about kids, we should talk about your childhood memory. Have you got one for us?
Funnily enough, I was thinking about this, and I have so many happy childhood memories. I come from a family of 5 children, but actually the memory that most sticks in my mind is something that never happened. And I just wanted to share that one because it kind of leads on to other things I wanted to talk about the power of the mind. I have a memory, a really acute memory. I can remember every single little detail of being bitten by a dog. I was in my pushchair outside the newsagents waiting for my mum. I can remember the feeling of the teeth, the gums. I can remember every little thing about it. And I used to always recite this memory when explaining why I was quite frightened of dogs. Until one day when I was about 25, my mum overheard me telling this memory and said it wasn't true. It had never, ever happened. And I'd obviously dreamt it, or it was some innate fear. Wow. And I just thought it was an interesting thing because it really is the memory that sticks in my mind, and it never actually happened.
Gosh, so I'm going to have to rack my brains now. You know, you do recreate you know, what your reality is isn't necessarily the reality that took place.
Exactly.
Brilliant.
Exactly.
What brought you to the Côte d'Azur then?
So, I used to work in the film business. I started working in films back in 1984, thinking that I would do that for 5 years until I started a family, and that never happened, or it didn't happen for a long, long time. And I worked in London for a couple of years, then I moved to Madrid for 10 years and worked in films there. And my dear friend Denise Odell, who is a producer for Kanzaman Films in Madrid, also has a company in Monaco. And so she brought me to Monaco to work on a film, and that's where I met my dear José, my husband. And so that's what brought me here.
That sounds incredibly glamorous, working in the film industry. Give us go on a fun story from the film industry.
It was a really glamorous time, especially when I started working in films, because I did mainly low-budget films where the whole team, there was a real family feel to it. And towards the end of my time, I worked in the film business for about 25 years, and towards the end of that, it was becoming a different kettle of fish. It was kind of big studio films where you're just a screw in the works. But no, I had a wonderful time, met lots of very, very inspiring people. Obviously, I had a funny time with Mickey Rourke on one of the first films that I did, where I had to go and fix his video for him in his hotel room. Had not a clue what I was doing, walked in, and I have to say, I'm sorry, Mickey, if you're listening. But
which we hope you are.
Which we hope you are. Mickey Rourke was the most extraordinary person, because he certainly wasn't handsome in a classical kind of way, but gosh, when he looks at you and smiles, it was amazing, the magnetism that he has. You see that actually in the opening scene of Rumblefish. I think that was his first film. That extraordinary screen presence that he has. So yeah, that was an interesting experience. And then I've worked with lots of people over the years. Somebody else who really surprised me was Robert De Niro, who
it's like having Tom Jones here on The Voice compared to someone else I worked with.
No, I don't usually like to name drop, but I know it's quite exciting to go back over that. And Robert De Niro came to work with us in Madrid, and I was amazed by him because usually, I mean, John Travolta, when he came to work on the Côte d'Azur, came with an entourage of at least 15 people and some very peculiar requests in his rider, which is kind of his contract. But Robert De Niro arrived with just his assistant, just one assistant, and went through the streets of Madrid.
Which is cool. Really
totally
cool.
and utterly cool. No bodyguards.
Are you tongue-tied? Because when I see a famous person, I start to pretend that I don't know they're famous at all. So I'd be like, no, I don't know. I'm not even looking at how gorgeous they are, which they must get all the time. You do not get tongue-tied or anything?
No, I don't get tongue-tied. I try to be really natural with them. I would never ask for an autograph. No. I would never do that. But, you know, I have... Oh, gosh, I remember meeting Henry Darrow. He played Manolito in The High Chaparral.
Oh, okay.
And when I was 9 years old, I was so in love with Manolito. And if you had told me back then that one day I would meet him... And so when I did meet him, I didn't even realise who he was in the beginning. I was working on a TV series of Zorro. And somebody had put a poster on his dressing room door of him as a younger man. And by this time, he was kind of 75, 76. And I did say to him, oh, Henry, if you only knew how much I loved you when I was 9 years old. So, no, I tried to kind of be natural.
Which is lovely for them to hear, even that late on.
I think it is. They're just human beings.
Yeah,
you know? I mean, that's such a cliche thing to say, but it's true.
Yeah, and you do have to remember that, don't you?
Mm-hmm, definitely. So that's what brought me to Monaco. I was working on a film called Rhinoceros Hunting in Budapest. And
catchy.
Yes, catchy title. I know, not a very catchy film. It was a brilliant, brilliant film. I met my hero Nick Cave on that film, had dinner with him and with Ewan Bremner, and met my husband, Jose.
I love this. So through that 7 degrees of separation now, Robert De Niro is really not far away
from Nick Cave.
Yeah.
And I've been here ever since. That was nearly 20 years ago now. So
massive change then to go from film industry to yoga.
Basically, I carried on working in film when I got to Spain. I tried working out of Monaco, but it was mainly commercials here, not so much feature films. So I did go away a couple of times. And then I met a lady who worked out of Villefranche, and I worked with her for quite a long time. And then we adopted Lilia. And when we adopted Lilia, I carried on working for a couple of years. I'd take her into the office in a little basket with me. And by the time she got to 2, I just thought, no, I have not waited 44 years to have this child. and not be with her. So then I kind of went through a few years of really not knowing what to do. I considered taking a normal office job, and the idea of that was just anathema by then because email had arrived. And
it's actually really, really hard to juggle being a mum and working, isn't it?
It really is. And people would say to me, oh, once she starts school, things will be easier. And it wasn't. It was even worse when she started school, because you have to be there to pick her up for lunch and then to pick her up in the evening. And so
the hours don't suit working hours, do they? School hours. Not unless you want to have them in garderie and everything all day long.
Exactly, and that's again where I thought, no, I've not waited this long to give her away to anybody else. So I kind of racked my brains, and by this time I was already practicing yoga a lot. On a daily basis, and I suddenly remembered, again, it's a bit of a cliche, but what people say, make your passion your work. And so I started by teaching friends, really, just to see whether I was able to teach, because knowing something is not the same as being able to teach it. I know that through knowing English very well and it being impossible to teach.
I think my dad's, I was brought up with that, be paid to do what you love.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is a really good mantra to have in life, actually.
It really is. I mean, I'm not sure if I was a single mum that I could make an actual living teaching yoga, but I'm in the lucky position of being in a couple, and so between the two of us, we get by. It's certainly not like working in the film business, but that's the sacrifice.
But there's lots of different types of yoga, isn't there? So
there are.
I get confused when I see them all. You sort of see Madonna's one is that hot, sweaty one, isn't it? What's that one?
She does more Ashtanga yoga. So, a quick run through. I mean, basically, people often get confused by the name hatha yoga. Hatha just means postural. It's come to mean a more gentle style of yoga, but that's not necessarily true. All postural yogas, including Ashtanga, Iyengar, Vinyasa, are hatha yoga.
Okay.
Ashtanga is more like a power yoga. There's a certain series of movements, and basically you only practice there. I think there are 4 series in total, but you always do the same sequence, and it's very fast and very powerful and probably does get very hot. The one that you're thinking of, I think, is Bikram yoga. Bikram yoga is practiced in a room that's heated to about 40 degrees. So, yes, I can't imagine.
It's like 2 for the price of 1. It's a sauna.
Exactly.
At the same
it's
time.
Supposed to be very cleansing. My feeling is, and I've never practiced, but I'm sure it's true, that you become much more bendy because it's so hot. But I'd be very worried about perhaps forcing your body into...
Just have to take it easy.
Yes.
Get your medical note from your doctor.
Voila.
You do which one?
So I practice a yoga that's inspired by a lady called Vanda Scaravelli. I started, which was the third, perhaps best known style of yoga, with the Iyengar school of yoga, as did Vanda Scaravelli. She actually met Iyengar back in the 50s or 60s, it must have been in the 60s, when he visited her home in Italy with Yehudi Menuhin, who was a great fan of Iyengar, and also Krishnamurti. She was about 45 by the time she even started yoga, and she started in that Iyengar style, as did I. Iyengar is a very therapeutic form of yoga. They use a lot of props, and the focus is very much on alignment. And I think when Vanda got to about 75 or 80, she thought, this is all a little bit too rigid and not very kind to my ageing body. And so she developed a way of working. Her famous book is called Awakening the Spine. She developed a way of working much more intuitively with the spine, with this kind of wave-like motion that comes when you focus on gravity and breath and work from within. And that's the yoga that I practice.
I feel like
teach.
I should be sitting straighter now with my knees. I'm very conscious I'm not sitting straight.
I'm exactly the same. As soon as I start talking about yoga, my feet become grounded and I draw up into my core, and there's a kind of expansion that takes over the body. And so it is the way that I teach. I do try to teach people that you don't have to put your mat down and do an hour and a half of yoga every day. It's something that you bring into your everyday life. So you can, my students will laugh if they're listening, but you can, you know, while you're brushing your teeth, be balancing on one leg. I often say when I'm waiting for Lily at the bus stop, I'm doing forward bends. And
it's really important, because I was reading about ageing recently, and one of the things they were saying, actually, when you're sort of over 60, which neither of us are, but when you're over 60, you should be maybe, one hand on the sink, maybe with your doctor's permission, doing your teeth and lifting one foot off the ground to keep that balance.
It's interesting that you say that, because I absolutely agree. I think I'm always saying to my dad, you know, when you put your shoes on, try just standing on one leg. So many older people, their troubles and woes begin with a fall. And if we can start working on our balance, and obviously strength as well, and flexibility now. Having said that, it is never too late to start yoga, and that's the joy as well. I have a student who's 80 years old. I have other students who are 13-year-olds who come with their mums or their dads.
Mainly, you do your yoga mainly in English, do you know?
I do, mainly. That wasn't a conscious decision, but I guess through word of mouth. I do one class in French on a Wednesday, and all the other classes are in English. Although I have French people that come, and I can, or Spanish people, and I can always explain in those other languages. I'd rather not do a kind of completely bilingual class where you're switching from one to the other. It's very disturbing for everybody.
So you started off, you've obviously done all your training, then you started off doing some private teaching, but now you're, everywhere. When I look at your list of where you are. Things are going well, and I do have quite a lot of classes. I teach, I've got 2 studios that I use in Roquefort, beautiful studio in Valbonne, Groove Which is
Yoga.
A new one,
That's
studio.
New. Lucy Moore, who's another yoga teacher, completely different style to me, which is lovely as well. Because we can kind of swap.
So someone who doesn't work one style, they go to the other one and try that one. Yeah,
absolutely. I've always said that finding a yoga teacher is like finding a psychologist. It kind of drives me mad when I hear people say, "Oh no, I tried yoga, I didn't like that." You can't just try it once. Maybe the style of yoga or the teacher, the voice becomes really important. Perhaps that one's not for you. Then you go and you try another style. And
the time in your life, I know. I mean, I've been to your yoga classes before. Then we got a puppy.
Yes.
Suddenly I had to come home to take the puppy out because she couldn't be left all day. Yeah. And that just then, derailed me. But I'll get back into it. New Year's resolutions.
But that's exactly it. You have to listen to your body and your mind. There is no point coming to yoga if the coming to yoga is going to stress you out.
Exactly. So
I'm very understanding of that, and I have people who stop coming for years and then come back. I'm very flexible. I'm a yoga teacher.
And what I've seen you do more and more recently are these amazing retreats as well. You set up workshops. You've done retreats. People have hired you down in Théoul to kind of run.
Yes,
was it a week long?
The Théoul gig is a week long, so I go and teach yoga there every morning.
People that maybe have a holiday home here, they could book you to come and do yoga for them, so they don't have to be in a hotel doing all the activities.
Absolutely. I did that this summer. I had some people who, luckily for me, were renting a glorious villa in Bar-sur-Loup, and I went up and taught them every morning. I had another group who came. That was interesting, actually, a group of Americans who came to stay in Julia Child's villa, which I had never visited and which is just next door to us. Julia Childs was the famous American chef, kind of the American Fanny Craddock. And so I went and taught them for a week in there.
So it's like, for them, it's a bit like a spa retreat. You come to the south of France, get a bit of Côte d'Azur living, and, I guess they can get... Well, I've got a massage expert coming up in a couple of interviews' time.
Yes.
She goes and does things in people's houses, so they can create their own little package wellness package.
That's exactly what happens. I had another student towards the end of the summer who decided to do exactly that, but set up her own little boot camp at home.
Yeah,
so
cool.
She had personal trainers coming in, and tennis coaches and masseurs, and then me for her yoga.
Great idea.
Yes, no, it is, and it works out much cheaper
Than,
obviously,
say, going off to one of those
The people that I work with in Teul actually have a week of fasting, so
they don't even need to spend money on food.
No, exactly. So it's very cheap.
Real saving. So, okay, we talked a little bit off air about customs and traditions. You're married to a French stroke Spanish guy, so you're living much more the French reality. So what kind of things have you seen maybe that you're like, oh gosh, that's so French? Or
Oh, well, the obvious one is the kissing, I guess, and that was true both of Spain, where, as I think I said, I lived for 10 years, and France.
Do they do two kisses in Spain?
They do 2 kisses in Spain, always 2 in Spain, whereas in France, I think it really, yes, whenever we visit my in-laws, it's 3, and we're always getting it wrong and bumping noses. But the funniest thing for me about that is when I take my husband back to England, to my very British father and brothers, who are horrified at the idea of having to kiss anybody.
That's so British.
Yeah, exactly, and kind of literally make the sign of the cross. And so Jose, my husband, takes great delight in kissing them.
Because that's the thing, it's like friends kiss, and even work colleagues, they do the bis and they do the 2 kisses, but when 2 men really are good friends, then they would kiss in this country and do the bis, where in England they'd stick to their handshake.
Absolutely, the handshake, if that. And so he takes great delight in going in for the full kiss. And they're kind of coming round to it. My older brother he's married to a girl from Ecuador, so he's much more open to that. But the others, they struggle with that.
Great, that's a good one. And I know that you do yoga. You're very into nature and walks and hikes. Is there one place you'd recommend that you don't mind sharing with us?
I thought about that, because there are a couple of places that I don't want to share. But the place that holds a very special place in my heart is actually so close to Barcelona. It's Les Courmettes, the Domaine des Courmettes. We were actually married there in a field. We had a Buddhist ceremony.
Big hill. That's a big snow on top.
Yeah, but overlooks Bar-sur-Loup, and you can drive up there. As I say, we were married there. They're fantastic. The only problem is you can't take your dogs anymore.
Okay, that's good to know.
There are fantastic hikes, amazing views. If you're going to see Corsica from anywhere, it will be from up there. So
got those amazing old trees that you can't climb, but they're hundreds of years old.
1,000-year-old olive trees. Sorry, not olive trees, oak trees. Yes. Quite difficult to find. I think there are signs now. When we used to go up there, it was very difficult to find the forest with these trees in, but now I think it's easier.
Fantastic. So, and if we're down on one of the beaches that you won't tell us, those nice select beaches, have you got a book that you've read recently that you'd recommend?
My favourite book, as you, I think, well know, is Hilary Mantel. My favourite author is Hilary Mantel. Wolf Hall, I've never read anything like it. For the language, for the atmosphere, the research that woman does is extraordinary. There's another lighter book that I also love and which I would adore people to read, especially those with younger daughters, and that's Caitlin Moran, How to Be a Woman. I love that book, and I think that's a really important book.
And I'll put those as links after.
Thank you.
Because we touched very early at the very beginning about how we met and how that was such an important way to meet. And what's reinforced our friendship, I think, as well, you'd say, probably agree, is the book club.
Yes.
It's a great, and anyone can set one up.
Anyone can
do
set
it
up
in French,
club.
in English. Actually, the more diverse people in your book club, the more fun it makes it. Because you get a variety of books, you get a variety of discussions, of opinions.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I was thinking about that. How would and of course, yes, if you have a child, mother and baby groups are great, but not everyone has a child. Book clubs are a fantastic way of meeting other people.
Yeah, and you just set how you want it to be. It can be in the daytime. We do ours in the evening every 5 weeks or 4 weeks.
Yes, maybe we're quite good actually, aren't we?
Once a month.
We go for once a month, and
we've read amazing books. It's kind of got us away from chick lit.
Yes,
you know.
Yes,
yes. It's been good, and you don't love every book you read necessarily, but that's what
I love about it. And I've often said that at book club because I've often not particularly enjoyed the books, but they're things that I would never have read otherwise. And so,
so there were a couple of great tips there. I think if you come to the south of France and you rent a villa, we know the person. What's your website?
My website is my name, so www.fayevillalba.com.
So VILLALBA.
B-A.
And I'll put that as a link later on. We've got the book to read down on the beach. We're going up to Les Cormettes to see the old trees. Fantastic, Faye. If you want to finish off, have you got an inspirational quote to leave us with, or a way of living?
I have, and this kind of brings me back to my dog memory that never actually happened. I think and it may sound slightly negative in the first instance, but it's not. My favourite quote, I think, is, and this was my mum that introduced me to this, listen carefully. I have suffered many terrible things in my life, most of which never happened.
Yeah, That's brilliant. I love it. Yeah. We spend a lot of time, don't we, worrying about what may happen. And, you have to sort of... It's a great mantra to live by.
As I say, at first hearing, it may sound slightly negative, slightly off-kilter, but I think that's... and it just goes again to prove the power of the mind. One of my favourite, just to finish, one of my favourite little practices that I do in yoga with my students at the end of a class when we're relaxing is I just say to them, no matter how you're feeling, and you can do this, listeners, while you're listening, you can do it right now, let a little tiny smile appear on your face, and immediately you'll feel a sense of well-being. And if you make the smile wider, then that well-being can become positivity, it can become joy, it can become gratitude. No matter how you're feeling, let that little smile appear and let that feeling just wash through your body.
Well, I'm sitting right opposite you, so you can see I'm smiling like a Cheshire cat. So I'm going to feel fantastic. Faye, brilliant. Thank you ever so much for sharing that with us. I really appreciate it.
It's been a real pleasure.
Well, I hope you're feeling relaxed now, Fireflies, and that you've got a huge smile too. I told you that was going to be a real treat. What a life, rubbing shoulders with Hollywood greats before settling in the south of France. Faye, you're really living the dream. So Fireflies, maybe you don't even live here yet. Are you coming on holiday? Maybe you're coming for a wedding. Remember that many of my interviewees are still here for you, the holiday makers. Lizzie Parks in episode 6 sings with her various groups and bands at private events and weddings. Julia Edgley from episode 5 and Faye can help you organise health workshops. And they both have lots of contacts in the field and can do this in your holiday villas. Heine and Vitzi from episode 8 can organise furniture painting and art workshops in their beautiful atelier in Rourke in the Var. And coming up in episode 10, we talk to Tina Silva from Le Macondil, which is a 5-star hotel. Now, if you're looking for a place to stay, a spa treatment, or to have coffee somewhere fabulous, then you do need to check that out. In many of the school vacations, I also run the kids' clubs in the Beachcomber French Riviera, which used to be known as the Sofia Country Club and is part of the Muratoglu Tennis Academy complex. Worth checking that out too. If you do live here and you love it and you have something to share, get in touch. It really is fun, it's laid back, and it's such a great way to put back into the community. Go to rivierafirefly.com and through there you can contact us to suggest a podcast chat with you. We're open to most themes. Please do tell your friends about us. Like us, please share, please review us on iTunes, because it will help in the algorithms for others to find us, and that's going to mean that we'll be able to be in touch with more fantastic people to interview. Okay, that's all for now. Thanks for listening, Fireflies. Have a good week.
This episode was brought to you by Riviera Firefly, or Côte d'Azur Living, by your host and my mum, Antonia Beauvoisin Brown. Please subscribe, like and share. Until next time, au revoir les Fireflies.